Hey there, this is Aria Craig, your empowerment and leadership strategist for ambitious moms, particularly single, divorced, and blended moms who are ready for elevation, leadership, and success in their personal and professional lives. And it is time for our Ask Aria segment that I have on Thursdays, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. So what I normally do is I take questions that come in through email, that come in through DM, social media, that people even ask me in person. For the last couple of weeks, I have not done that because I really wanted to talk about other issues that were a little bit pressing at the time. And this week and probably next week, no different. So this past Monday, I had the opportunity of being a guest on WVON 1690 radio with host Chat Daddy Sims. And I've been on his show before. This topic was a little bit more personal to my heart. And I thought it was important considering what we're hearing in the news today about the doctor who sexually abused the gymnasts, the Olympians, the ones that won gold medals. We don't think of them as having suffered or experienced traumatic situations because they're celebrities in the public eye, but they too are human. They too had to grow up, and we see now that they've experienced, when they were younger, there were about 60 young ladies that came forward that say that they were sexually abused by this doctor who they entrusted, who they had a sense of closeness to. They were close to, and hopefully, in hopes that this person can help them further their career or help them to make sure that they were in top shape to be successful in their careers. So with the conversation that I had on 1690 radio with Chat Daddy, I wanted to go into a little bit more discussion because the conversation, the topic was more so how to have the conversation with your kids about, and the tough conversations they are, about sex, drugs, and bullying. And when we're talking about sex, we're not talking about just consensual, but we're also talking about non-consensual sex. And that is the topic that I want to talk about in our Ask Aria segment today. I'm going to roll these 4 topics out over the next couple of weeks. So I hope that you get a lot of information from this. You can share this with anyone who you know maybe have probably experienced these situations or trying to figure out how to have the conversations with their children about these topics. But today I want to more so talk about the non-consensual sex part. So it is not anything that's new. I have broadcasted about this topic before, not often, but I have before, in hopes to bring closure and bring some type of healing to people who have experienced sexual abuse. Just to give you a little bit more information about my background with this topic. I was about 8 years old when I was molested by someone who I actually would see at church every Sunday. I would worship with this particular person. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I was comfortable or had the nerve and the brave enough to bring this situation to the attention of my mom. As many of you know, my dad was not actively involved in my life. He didn't really come into my life until I was about 34, and I really don't like to talk about that often, but sometimes I have people that will say to me, I don't really hear you talk that much about your dad when you're going over your experiences when you were young, or you mentioned something that happened when you were younger. That's because he wasn't there. We do have a better relationship. We've been able to reconcile, but this topic is so important for parents to be involved in because it takes both parents, not just one. It shouldn't be just one person, one parent during the hard work and the having the tough conversation and being in a sense of or a place of discomfort, because it is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for the parent as much as it is for a child, probably more. So for this particular topic with the non-consensual sex part, when this happened to me when I was 8, and as I mentioned, I mentioned it to my mom well, not mention it. What I did was I wrote a letter because I didn't know how to approach it and how to talk to her about it. So what I did was I wrote it out on a letter when I was about 14 years old, and I taped it to the wall over the foot of her bed. Oh, sorry, not the foot, the head of her bed. So when she woke up in the morning, she just taped the letter off and read it, and then when she's ready to talk about it, we could, which I thought more so would be after work. She would call every day, like she normally did from work, just to make sure that we were okay when we got out of school, check in on us. And this day was like any other day. She did the same thing. She called in to make sure we were okay. I knew that she had the letter because when I looked over the bed, it was gone. So I knew she took the letter. Well, I just wanted to make sure. So when she called, I asked her, did you get the letter that I wrote you? And she said, yes. And I said, did you read it? She said, yes. And that was it. There was no further discussion. For me, I think what has made this situation more challenging for me, and I've talked about this before, my mom and I didn't really have the best relationship with each other, but I think that this played a part in it. I'm not going to say I know that this played a part in it. Even after me writing the letter and her reading it, that Sunday afterwards, the interaction with this person was the same. Like, I never saw her interact with him different. We still continue to worship there at this church. As a matter of fact, we worshiped at this church until I was 19 and I left. I decided to leave. But I was about 18, and I didn't see any difference in the way she interacted and engaged with him after I mentioned this to her, even though this situation happened when I was 8 and I told her 6 years later. The problem with that is your child really looks to you for nurturing. Your child looks to you like your child's hero. They need comforting from you. They need you to heal their boo-boos. They need for you to make everything better and everything go away. They need for you to take care of the situation. They need to not be in the situation anymore. They don't want to be scared. They need you to love on them and just fix the problem. So because I don't think that she had any type of conversation. It's like from their interaction, it didn't appear that there was any type of conversation. And she never came to me about it after that. I was very disappointed, and that was probably what sparked me when I became a parent, when I became a mother, and making sure that I had a better type of dialogue with my son. When my son was younger, what I did and what I suggest to all parents that have younger children that are able to speak and understand their body parts is to have a code word. Have a code word in your immediate family with people that you trust. Tell that code word to your child and explain to them when the code word should be used. This could be a code word, something simple as toothbrush. If your child comes to you where you're cooking or you're on the phone, you're laughing and watching TV, something like that, and they look at you and say toothbrush, you or their father, and say toothbrush, and you say, well, your toothbrush is upstairs. What did you do with your toothbrush? Do you need another toothbrush? I can go and get you another toothbrush tomorrow. And then they say, no, mommy, or no, daddy, toothbrush. That should automatically resonate with you. That's the code word. They need to have a conversation. At that point, you need to stop what you're doing, take them to a room or take them somewhere where they feel comfortable with talking with you, and do not interrupt. Just listen to them talk about what happened. At that point, if you feel like you need to ask certain questions, but at that point when they're done talking is when you probably should ask your questions. If you have to have pen and paper ready so that you can take notes, then so be it. And you need to probably tell them that you're sorry that happened to them. Make sure you are loving them and holding them. If they want to cry, let them get it out. You want to make sure that they have your full support, and that you are going to do everything in your power to take care of the situation. That also includes removing them from that person and removing them from whatever environment that person is in, or if it's that person that needs to be removed from that environment. So I suggest also that you go to counseling, because a counselor can tell you what exactly the steps that you need to take, whether it's to talk directly to that person so you can get a full story. Because if it was something that it was more like this person brushed against me or something like that, you want to kind of make sure that there wasn't anything that was mistaken, because you're talking about somebody's livelihood here that can very well be impacted if you go a step further, like going to the authorities and having them report it. So, but if it was something that was like all in, and there was, something that from the conversation with your child, there was things that were happening besides just a brush or a touch, like a quick touch, then that's something that is a whole different story. Again, you need to go to, I would suggest you go to counseling. I shouldn't say you need to, but I would suggest you go to counseling and take your child so that the counselor can hear what's going on, and the counselor should be able to give you steps on what needs to be done to help you reconcile that. Well, not reconcile, because it's not going to reconcile, but for you to get on a path towards healing and trying to resolve this issue. Healing, when your kid is at a certain age, as I said, this happened to me when I was 8. I'm in my early 40s. So this is something I will never forget. I have been able to get closure from, and I have been able to move forward and talk about this and hopefully heal and help other women who have gone through this to heal and bring closure to them. But again, I'm never going to forget this situation. So if I haven't forgotten it, it was traumatic enough. Probably your experience, depending on what happened, might be traumatic enough to where your child is not going to forget about it. But they need the tools and the resources to move forward to make sure it doesn't have a negative impact. They don't feel like it was their fault, because you definitely don't want to, back in the day, generations, like in my grandparents' generations, they would, try to make it seem like it was a little girl's fault for being fast or showing, or, having on a short dress or something like that. Chat Daddy and I talked about this as part of our conversation on the radio, on that segment, on that interview Monday. This is a situation where you do not want it to be to where your child feels like it is his or her fault. You want to make sure that you are supporting your child to the nth degree and making sure that you get this taken care of, and you're not putting them back in that situation with that person or that environment with that person. There are certain signs that you want to look for, like if your child is withdrawn when you're approaching them, or if they're young enough to where you're still bathing them, they don't want you to touch them in a certain area, they feel uncomfortable, they don't want to dress or undress in front of you when they're that young. If you're seeing any physical signs like bruises, scratches, rashes in certain areas, those are telltale signs that something is going on. If you're seeing your children playing with toys inappropriately, like he looks like or she looks like they're making the toys interact inappropriately, or if they're touching another child inappropriately, or if they're touching you or another adult in certain areas, or if they're touching themselves that way, be on the lookout. Those are signs that something is not right, and you need to sit down and ask your child, what's going on? Why did you do that? I noticed that you did that, and who did that to you, and where did they touch you? You want to make sure you're having a conversation and go from there. For me, because I didn't address this until I was older, because I didn't know how to, when I went to counseling, my counselor told me, with my husband, he wasn't my husband then, we were dating at the time, and this is where I saw that there was the impact, because it was really impacting my physical relationship with him. So this is when the counselor said, I suggest that you have the talk and confront your abuser, which I did. Me confronting him wasn't as challenging as when she told me the next step was to have the conversation with my mom. That probably, I'm not going to say probably, that was the biggest challenge, because I didn't know how to deal with it emotionally. Like, how can I talk to her? I'm going to be angry? Am I going to cry? I don't know how to address this with her, because now that I'm a parent, I can't process my son telling me that this happened to him and I do nothing about that. Like, I can't process even thinking that thought. So I wouldn't understand why she didn't do anything. And I had somebody to ask me, how do you know she didn't do anything? Even if she did say something, again, her interaction with this person was the same. It's like it never happened. And we still continue to worship at this congregation. So I couldn't imagine me responding that way if that had ever happened to my son. So I didn't know how I would approach her years later with how she responded to it, or her lack of response to it. Which is, again, why I have this conversation now on how to have a conversation with them. You see in those signs, have a conversation with them. And again, when they're older, they're going to remember how you were their hero, how you came and you were their advocate, and you challenged this person on what happened to, and you took the necessary steps to make sure that it didn't happen again. So this is all that I have for today. If you have an event that's around sexual abuse, or somebody who has experienced it and they've been able to heal and move forward, and they're trying to have that type of connection with people who have experienced it also, for them to heal and move forward and have those conversations with their children or even their grandchildren, or if you're having, again, like an event at a church to where this is an important topic that you want to discuss and you need the right person in the room to have this topic, please feel to have this discussion, please feel free to reach out to me. Aria@ariacraig.com is my email. Again, that's Aria@ariacraig.com. DM me on social media and get in contact with me, and I will connect with you on what we can do moving forward to have this conversation or to speak at this event to bring closure and healing to your audience. Until next time, this is Aria Craig, and I will talk to you later. Bye.